Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we are going to talk about fables versus folktales. Do you know what a fable is? Last week we talked a little bit about fables, and I want you to think in your mind about what a fable is right now. Hopefully you're thinking along the lines of characters. Fables are short stories that involve characters that are typically animals, and fables convey some kind of message or a moral. That's the learning from last week. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about folktales and compare the two. Folktales are generally stories that are passed down from generation to generation, and they are said orally through each generation. And usually they don't have a known author to them. So let's talk a little bit about fables and compare them to folktales. Fables have animals that act like people. In addition to that, there's usually some kind of problem or a trick that occurs. And then we talked about the idea that there's some kind of lesson that the author wants you to learn with it. And fables are always fictional stories. And they have some kind of personification to them. So all of the animals in a fable act as if they were humans. They may sing, they may dance, they may move around in some kind of way. Some common examples of fables are stories like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, The Lion and the Mouse, The Tortoise and the Hare. Those are some of the more common ones. As we transition over to folktales, we know that folktales are passed down orally from generation to generation. And I also want you to consider the fact that there are common people or animals that are the characters in folktales. So they're everyday normal people. There's usually phrases that are repeated over and over again, and it's usually done in like a set of 3. Also, there is always some kind of problem that the character is trying to solve there too. Some common examples of folktales that you may know are like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, The 3 Little Pigs, or even Little Red Riding Hood. Join me today as we read and discover about fables and folktales. I'm going to start off by reading you a fable, and this one is called The Fox and the Stork. The fox invited his friend the stork over to eat soup. When the stork arrived, the fox poured the soup into a flat dish. The stork was hungry, but all she could do was dip the tip of her long beak into the dish. The fox laughed and slurped up all the soup, while the poor stork was left with nothing to eat. I wonder how that made the stork feel. Remember, storks have long beaks, and if the dish is flat, the stork isn't able to get down correctly and eat what it needs to eat. The next day, the stork decided to return the favor and asked the fox to her home for dinner. The stork placed some tasty meat in a jar with a long neck and set it on the table. The fox eagerly tried to get to the meat, but he could not. The stork ate easily because her long beak could reach down into the jar. The hungry fox admitted that he had been wrong the day before. Let's think about the moral of that story there. The moral of that story is, if you do mean things to others, they might do mean things to you in return. Let's look at another fable, because remember, fables are very short. And remember, the characters are acting as if they were humans. So these characters are talking and they're doing things the way humans would. Eating off of dishes is just another example. The next story or fable that I would like to read to you is called The Fox and the Crow. The hungry fox saw the crow fly to his favorite branch in a tree. In his beak, the crow had a tasty piece of cheese. The crafty fox made a plan and trotted over to the tree to talk to the crow. "Oh, Mr. Crow, you truly are the most handsome bird I have ever seen," he said. This caught the crow's attention, and he looked down at the fox. "You fly so fast and so gracefully," the fox continued. "I bet you sing as beautifully as you fly." Now, the crow loved to hear compliments, so he decided to sing for the fox. He opened his beak, and the piece of cheese tumbled down the fox's waiting mouth. When the fox was finished eating, he smiled up at the crow. "Thank you for the delicious snack," he said. "I got just what I wanted." Somebody got tricked in that fable. Let's talk about the moral in that story. The moral is, do not trust strangers who try to flatter you. Remember how the bird actually had the cheese in its mouth and then it fell down into the fox's mouth? It got tricked. So again, do not trust strangers who try to flatter you. Let's read one more fable because fables are so short. The next one is called The Dog and His Reflection. A dog was walking along happily with a nice piece of meat in his mouth. As he crossed a bridge over a stream, he glanced at the water below. Looking back up at him was another dog who also had some meat. The dog on the bridge wanted more, so he bent down and snapped at the other dog. As he did, his own meat fell from his mouth into the stream. The sad dog then realized that he had not seen another dog, only his own reflection. The moral of that story is, if you are always greedy for more, you might lose what you already have. Now, let's go ahead and look at a folktale. The folktale that we're going to look at today is called Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Once upon a time, there lived a youngster named Goldilocks. One day, she went for a walk in the woods. She found a house and knocked on the door. No one answered, so she walked in. Should she just be walking into someone else's house? 3 bowls of porridge sat on the table. She tasted the porridge from the big bowl. This porridge is too hot, she said. She tasted the porridge from the medium bowl. This porridge is too cold, she said. She tasted the porridge from the small bowl. This porridge is just right, she said, and ate it all. Can you see in the picture that she ate all of the porridge? Every bit of it. Goldilocks saw 3 chairs. She sat in the big chair. This chair is too big, she said. She sat in the medium chair. This chair is still too big, she said. She sat in the small chair. This chair is just right, she said. Then the chair broke. Oh well, she said. Now she's going to people's houses and breaking chairs? Something's wrong with that. Goldilocks was sleepy. She climbed the stairs looking for a bed. She lay down on the big bed, but it was too hard. She lay down on the medium bed, but it was too soft. She lay down on the small bed, and it was just right. And when she laid down, what do you think she did? Yes, she went to sleep. The owners of the house returned. They did not like what they saw. Someone's been eating my porridge, said Papa Bear. Someone's been eating my porridge, said Mama Bear. Someone's been eating my porridge, said Baby Bear, and it's all gone. Can you imagine what Baby Bear feels like right now? I bet he feels very sad. The hungry bears saw their chairs. Someone's been sitting in my chair, said Papa Bear. Someone's been sitting in my chair, said Mama Bear. Someone's been sitting in my chair, said Baby Bear. And what happened? What happened to Baby Bear's chair? It's broken. Did you say it was broken? That's what happened. The hungry, angry bears went upstairs. Someone's been sleeping in my bed, said Papa Bear. Someone's been sleeping in my bed, said Mama Bear. Someone's been sleeping in my bed and, said Baby Bear, and she's still there. Shh, said Goldilocks. When Goldilocks saw the 3 hungry, angry bears, she jumped out of bed. She ran all the way home. Goldilocks never again went to the home of the 3 bears. And that's the end of the story. Let's talk a little bit about that story. When it comes to folktales, we learned that folktales involve things of 3s. We know that Goldilocks went to the bear's house and that she sat in the chairs, she ate the porridge, and she laid in the beds. That is an example of sets of 3s that folktales typically have. Additionally, there were common people in a folktale. Goldilocks is a common person. Although it's not a common name, it is a common person. And additionally, many of the phrases in the folktale were repeated over and over again. I want to thank you so much for joining me in my segment today, and I look forward to learning more with you next week. Thanks again.